of my fans out there, of the grassroots. I know I'm getting support of some of my clients, but that's what I need. I need enough people to give me enough money. I'll add some money personally, but, you know, I'm not Ross Perot. I'm not Steve Forbes. I mean, I can't, you know, spend hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, I can spend some. But, you know, I need a lot of support.
Is there anything left of the Goldwater wing of the Republican Party in Connecticut? Was there ever a Goldwater wing of the Republican Party in Connecticut?
Well, back in the Prescott-Bush days, you know, George W.'s grandfather, I think there was some evidence of that. And certainly there is a streak of Yankee parsimonious, real-world, pragmatic economics or politics that exists in New England. The good thing about New England is, you know, the social issues, the family values issues that seem to drive the race and inform the race, and the cultural divide that exists in the South and the West. It's not there in Connecticut, which is good for the general. I mean, you know, a real strong family values Republican is not going to win the primary, so that's off the table. That helps out in the general, but we do think that we want to give the people of Connecticut and New England at large a kind of a pole to the Republicans in that rig, a pole, an ideological cause to aspire to. Being a light Democrat or a middle-of-the-road politician is not something that anyone aspires to, or anyone it's going to cause any enthusiasm, especially among young people. You present a real ideology, a real plan, and young people respond to that, and that's the future.
The only plan people like Simmons have is vote for me because I'm not Chris Dodd. I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. And I don't want to just vote for somebody who isn't Chris Dodd. I mean, we need to have somebody that will actually make a difference. I mean, I think most Republicans in their hearts want small government. They want to shrink government, but they keep electing politicians to do the opposite. And the problem is, the minute you send a Republican to Washington, he likes it there. He wants to stay there, and so the only way to stay there is to grow government. I don't want to go there, and I certainly don't want to stay there. So if I do go there, I'm going to do all I can to shrink government.
Quickly,
I've got a slogan. Maybe in your heart, you know he's right. Oh, that's been used before.
That's been used before. Peter Schiff and Andrew Schiff, thanks very much. It's always a pleasure.
What about Morning in America?
Morning in America. Good. That one worked. Until next week on Freedom Watch. Thanks very much, guys. When the police are called to investigate a potential crime, they're required to follow the law of the state in which they work, as well as the United States Constitution they have sworn to uphold. In the case of Professor Henry Louis Gates in Cambridge, Massachusetts, it is now apparent that a stranger, unknown to the police, called and reported that someone else told her that she saw two men force their way into a home in Cambridge while carrying suitcases with them, and that they actually entered the house with the suitcases. While this call alone is certainly sufficient to send the police to the scene of this reported event, it is insufficient to trigger the use of government power to violate the constitutionally protected rights of Professor Gates. Thus, upon his arrival at the Gates home, Cambridge Police Sergeant Joseph Crowley had only the third-party report of what appeared to be a break-in. Had Sergeant Crowley seen the forcible entry, or had he had a search or arrest warrant issued by a judge, he could have entered the Gates home with or without the professor's consent. Absent Sergeant Crowley actually observing the forced entry, and absent a search or arrest warrant, the courts have held that a voice on the phone, in this case not even the voice of the witness to the forcible entry, rather the voice of someone to whom the forcible entry had been reported, is insufficient to give the police the authority to violate the homeowner's Fourth Amendment right to be secured from government intrusion in his home. Were the courts not to have held this way, think about it, any anonymous call could be used to induce the police to violate someone else's right to be secure in his home. A state of affairs never countenanced by the Constitution and specifically prohibited by the Fourth Amendment. Massachusetts law makes it a crime to be disorderly in public, not in the privacy of one's home. Disorderly conduct is conduct that persons in the immediate public area, if anyone is there, are prevented from doing what they are lawfully there to do. Thus, one cannot be disorderly if alone and in the desert, because no one else is there, and one cannot be disorderly if on one's own property or in one's home, because that's not public. One can also not be disorderly for speaking sternly or even rudely to the police. Many police, not knowing the person speaking to them, will actually arrest you if you appear to be rude to them until you calm down. But federal law permits homeowners to deny entrance to anyone from the government, police or not, to their homes, absent an arrest warrant, absent a search warrant, or absent them chasing somebody into the home, and to do so with impunity. Here to discuss this Professor Gates Sergeant Crowley incident, which now is going to become a beer blast at the White House, is Sheriff Richard Mack from Arizona and the author Tom Mullen. Sheriff Mack's book is The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, and Tom's book is A Return to Common Sense, Reawakening Liberty in the Inhabitants of America. Sheriff Tom, welcome to Freedom Watch. Sheriff, to you first. Yes. Am I the only person anywhere on television or in the media or the internet is saying that the police did not have the authority to enter that home because they didn't have a search warrant, they didn't have an arrest warrant, and they didn't witness any crime or purported crime taking place?
Judge, I hope you're not the only one. I really do. But you're the only one I've heard. And 2 weeks ago, or maybe it's even less, about a week ago, I made the same statement on the internet. I put it out that I totally agreed with you that the officer acted improperly. This is a misuse of the badge, the power of the badge. When he's in his own home, he can act like a jerk. He can say anything about my mother, about my wife, about my children. And you know what I have to say as an officer? I was a patrol officer. I was a sheriff. I was a supervisor over a department, my own sheriff's office in Arizona. And I will tell you that that is improper. You have to walk away. You have to keep your decorum and your professionalism. And that officer, I'm sorry, should have simply said, Professor Gates, have a nice day, and walk away.
Are we losing our concept of property rights? Are we losing the concept that a person's home is their castle and that the threshold of that home, it could be a rickety door or it could be a moat with a steel gate, is enough to keep anybody out, even the government itself?
Yeah, I think that one of the key concepts of my book is that we've lost all concept of property as a right. And I think that for most Americans, we don't understand anymore what liberty is. That situation there, the principle of liberty, the freedom to do whatever you wish, and as long as you're not harming somebody else, would have given a black and white answer to that situation, which is that the police should have stood down. But most people don't understand that anymore. We're not taught that anymore. And that's why probably most people don't look at that and see it for the rampant abuse that it is.
I don't want to talk about race because I don't know what was in Sergeant Crowley's heart.
Right.
He could be an absolute, a pure and saint-like individual when it comes to race, and I don't know what was in the professor's heart. But in a situation like that, where the police officer has not witnessed a crime, and the person detained or interrogated is obviously very unhappy. Right. Is it sort of a mano a mano type thing? I'm smarter than you are. Yeah, but I got a gun and a badge. Yeah. Do police actually, I mean, I know the answer to this because I was a judge for many years. Do police actually arrest people because they're out of line, to teach them a lesson, to win the mano a mano, even when no crime has been committed?
Judge, what do you think disorderly conduct charge is? That's all it is. That's all cops use it for. It's hardly ever used properly. And I don't know if it can be used properly. But this arrest was clearly made because the officer was frustrated and because he was offended, not because there was an offense against the law. And what I really like about your show, and this one in particular, is that you always bring it back to the Constitution. And that's where I have a problem. And the people I'm seeing all across the country are saying the same thing. There's such a huge disconnect between the officers and police in this country and other officials, judges as well, who swear an oath to uphold and defend the United States Constitution.
And that Constitution says that people shall be secure in their homes, places, papers, and things, and that security cannot be violated absent a warrant issued by a judge.
And Gates was in his own home. You don't commit disorderly conduct in your own home. And that's absolutely absurd. And I'm sorry. I really respect the people in law enforcement across this country. But this time, they were wrong.
Are you surprised, Tom, that in a world where the government can buy your house from you against your will, and sell it to your neighbor because your neighbor is going to raise it and put a dwelling or a parking garage on it that will produce more income, more real estate tax revenue for the government. Are you surprised that in a world where that can happen, the police think that they can enter your house and